In this chapter, we are going to cover the designer layer. Specifically, we are going to cover the Analytics tab, the Exploration mode, the lens, and the Fields section in the lens. Let's go over the Analytics tab exercise. Now that we have created our data set, we can close the Data Manager, all these tabs, and go back to the Analytics Studio, and all the way back to the App Launcher where we clicked on Analytics Studio. Now, if you go, for example, to Sales, you will notice that the Analytics tab is not available here. You can simply hit the Edit button on top right, scroll down to Analytics, and reorder, push it up a little bit, and hit Save. And now you have Analytics tab right here in the middle. So for the end user, the experience is seamless when clicking on the different objects and then getting to Analytics, and they can see Analytics Studio right there without even clicking on the Analytics Studio tab and going to the other URL or /tab. We are also going to cover creating an app exercise. For this exercise, we are just going to stick with creating a simple app, an empty app. So back to the Analytics Studio. From the same Create button, you can see an app. Now later on in these chapters, we are going to cover the templated apps and the apps available out of the box. But for now, I just want to show you how to create a blank app. So you can create a blank app by clicking on this, say my first app, and you hit Create. Notice it opens in its own tab, and it's empty. There are no data sets, no dashboards, no stories, no lenses. Later on, you will understand this is important for the options of sharing the asset permissions or the sharing which assets the users have access to. So notice when I went here to the app and clicked on the Share button, this is where you give access to users, groups, or even roles read directly from Salesforce. So if users have access to this app, they can see all the dashboards in it, or lenses, or stories, or data sets, or if they don't have access to it, they will simply not see it listed in apps when they log into Analytics Studio. Now that we have covered apps and we have our data set from the previous exercise, let's go start exploring the data set, and that is the Lens/Explorer mode. The final data set we created was called Op Owner Account, and that was the result of the recipes. Now, if you don't see this and you just came directly from that exercise, just refresh the browser and you should pick it up. Now, you explore a data set by simply clicking on it. This brings you to the Lens mode or the Explorer mode, where you can explore the data set. Things to note, the measures. So you change the measure represented here by clicking on the name. You can change this to sum of amount. You can also add another measure by count of rows again, for example. Bars, in this chart, this is a bar chart, it's pretty much the group. So you can group by, for example, account type. You can change the visualization by clicking on Trellis, and let's say you want to trellis this by opportunity type. So existing business, account type, new business add-on. I can always go back from this button, undo, all the way back to the first one, count of rows. Query limit is commonly used when you want to get the top or bottom and rows. For example, let's say I have grouped this by account name, and I click for sorting on count of rows in this case. And in this case, I just want the top 3, so I can go to query limit, hit edit, and type 3. And this will limit this to always to top 3. Now, if I sorted this descending, it would be the bottom 3 too. A better presentation would be sum of amount because all of them have one opportunity, as you can see, the bottom 3. Now, as I move, before I move to the right, there's one more, is the filter. This is where you simply add filters based on the measures, based on dates or dimensions. Now, as I move to the right, I have charts where I can change the presentation. Donuts, for example. And I have the formatting, which is properties of the charts. And I also have the history, where I can go back to all the way back, maybe to initial view, for example. I hide it by clicking on it again. This is also grayed out, just tells you what the chart is selected, chart mode. This is the table mode, where you can switch to a simple values table, which displays the rows as they are. Notice if I switch to values table, it picks up some random columns, and then I have to go down, edit, which ones are selected or not. I'm going to go back. And the second one was a compare table. This is our formula editor, pretty much in Einstein Analytics. We have a dedicated exercise on that. And then the pivot table. And the last mode is the advanced mode, which every product has some advanced feature, advanced mode capabilities. And this is the cycle mode, which is the Salesforce Analytics query language, where you can go here and manually type your or modify the query itself. Again, I'm going to go back to initial view. This covers pretty much the lens exploration. Now, you can always explore the data here, get to your chart, clip it maybe to a dashboard. But we also have the other recommended approach to create things within the dashboard, and we will see this in our next chapters. I'm going back to the slides. Just to recap, we did the chart mode, the table mode, and the cycle advanced mode. And that was pretty much for the demo, exploring data. Now, lenses are important because they have this feature called fields. And we use fields to modify the metadata of the dataset. Now, I know metadata might be a heavy word at this chapter, but it's pretty much the data describing the data. For example, I have account ID dot name. Maybe I want to change the label to say account name. Or I need to format the amount to show $sign or specific another currency or specific number of decimals, etc. That is where we use fields pretty much to do that for the data set itself. In this exercise, we can go and edit the account ID.name to account name, change some of the colors for account type, change owner name to rep name, currency format, default columns, and let's take a look how that is done through the fields. So I'm back to my lens, and you have to know this will apply to the data set itself. Although I'm doing it this time, I'm a user who has access, who has permissions to do this through either Manage Analytics, we'll show you the permissions later on, or Edit Data Flows. I can click on fields. Of course, I've gathered this information beforehand from the users, from the requirement. And I know, for example, well, first, let's go over the default fields in the table. Remember when I switched to the values table, it picked up random columns. So I'm going to override that by defining default fields. So my default fields, for example, I'm going to say, always show me account name first, and maybe opportunity name, right here, name. Who owns the opportunity, owner name, and amount. I just want to see these 4 fields anytime I switch to a values table and hit update. Next, I can look at the dimensions, and let's say I want to rename account ID.name. Just click on it, relabel it to account name. Another one I believe was owner ID.name. We wanted to change that, I clicked too soon, to rep name. And so on. And honestly, the first time you start, when you create the data set, it is recommended to go over all these changes, whichever ones you want to relabel, and do them one time in the field section so that every dashboard, every user leverages those new labels. Now, another exercise or part of the exercise was going to account type from the drop-down, not only rename, but actually edit the values. Now we can click on edit values. I have two values. I have one customer, one partner. Let's say I wanted to specify for customer a specific color. So I selected it, I hit done. And for customer, what I'm going to do is specify a new color, maybe bright green, this one. Now notice I had the option to change the label, but I'm not going to do it. It's not recommended on the data layer to change the value of the account type. This is account type. It has two values, customer and partner. If you ever need to change customer, for example, to client, you should do it at the data layer and change the value right there in a new field. The reason is if you change this customer to client, if you go advanced and you're checking the values of your filter behind the scene in Sackle, for example, it's going to show customer behind the scene, and in the UI, it's going to show the new value client, for example. So this can get confusing, and that's why we recommend changing it at the data layer. But for the colors, it's okay. You can change the colors here. I'm going to hit done. And this is pretty much for dimensions. Now for measures, I can go to amount, for example. I can go to number format. I can pick a custom format or one of the ones out of the box, currency. If I go to custom format and let's say I pick this guy here. Another tip is I can actually manually type the currency symbol I want. So for example, if I search for euro symbol, I can literally take this, control copy, and go back to my field and type it right here. So once I hit done, and then with save, you're going to show you are going to see that picks up the euro. Now there are other things you can do specifically with derived measures. Once you go to Sackle and you create some advanced metrics there or metrics to the advanced Sackle, you can actually specify the format here too. And for more information, do not forget these tiny buttons. Anytime you see these little videos, they are extremely helpful, introducing you to this particular feature within fields and how to use it with more examples. I'm going to hit save. Yes, it will apply everywhere because this gets connected to the data set. I'm going to hit cancel and refresh this page. Data set is not available because I did not save the lens, so I'm going to go back and just explore it for a bit. And I'm going to change this to sum of amount. And there you go, that's my euro. Also, if I look at account name, showing the new label. Look at rep name, showing the new label too. Now I'm going to step away from the comfortable beginner level, just for the advanced folks who are watching this, just note that we changed the labels. But behind the scene, if you go to Sackle here, these are still the API names account ID.name. Okay, so just don't forget that this is what you still need in case you are still or you are editing in advanced mode. Next is conversational analytics. And conversational analytics has become very important in all analytics tools. In fact, Gartner predicts up to 50% of the end users will be using conversational analytics in their daily job. One extreme example is asking Alexa not only what time is it or what's the weather like, but also what's my forecast or my opportunities I need to focus on at one point in time. Now the exercise, we're just going to type few conversational queries or analytics, and we can do this with the product because we enabled this under analytics settings to enable conversational analytics. So let's go and ask a few questions. I am going to reset this all the way back to original query. And let's say amount. So one way to understand this, you want to put the measure or the metric first, amount by industry, for example. Let's click on amount by account industry. And there you go, I'm getting sum of amount by industry. I can actually add one more dimension maybe and type and account type, for example, and there you go. And I actually get my color. Remember, this is the color we set under fields. There you go, that's the color, the bright green color. I'm going to keep it simple. I encourage you to go explore conversational analytics more. Do not forget these icons where you have these small videos that can walk you through more examples about conversational analytics and what you can do with those.